Thank you. Thank you. The safety and well-being of older adults living in long-term care facilities has never been more critical than now. As the exclusive ombudsman for Dallas County, the Senior Source works tirelessly to ensure just that. Suzanna Sulfstede is the director of the long-term care program. She joins us with insights and tips for families who have a parent or a loved one in an assisted living home. Good morning. Nice to have you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, what's an ombudsman?
Sure. Ombudsmen are advocates for individuals living in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. We work on behalf of the residents to address problems and to ensure that their rights are protected. And we do this by making regular, unannounced visits to each of the facilities where we go room to room, talking with the residents about their care and then working to get those complaints resolved. Ombudsmen are independent, meaning we don't work for the facility or anyone other than the residents, and our services are confidential and free of charge. Ombudsmen are also a resource for people in the community who are going through that overwhelming process of trying to choose a facility for a loved one. And while we can't recommend facilities, we can help narrow the list of options. Right. Their individual needs, and then we'll provide information to help guide them through that process.
Well, I know I speak for a lot of people that we're so grateful for what you're doing. How have you been supporting older adults in long-term care facilities since the pandemic?
Sure. So COVID-19 did cause us to temporarily suspend our in-person visits to the facilities, but we have been working tirelessly to continue providing support to our residents, their families, and the facilities remotely. We've been available by phone and have talked with residents and families, educated them on their rights. We've also provided a lot of emotional support for the residents who, as you can imagine, have been experiencing extreme isolation. And so just been talking with them about their care, listening to their stories, and of course, continuing working to address complaints on their behalf. For families, we've been providing a lot of support as they've struggled with that decision of whether or not to move mom or dad home during the pandemic. Right. You know, for some people that is an option, but for a lot of people it just really isn't feasible. And so our ombudsmen have helped talk them through the risks and benefits of moving someone home during this time. We also continue to provide support, helping people who are still having to make that decision of whether or not to place mom or dad in a facility. And you know, that's really hard right now because families can't go in and tour the facilities in person. And so they're having to make that decision somewhat blindly. And so that makes the information that we're able to provide that much more beneficial right now.
I think this is so cool. My dad passed right before the pandemic, but I've thought so often of him being in a long-term care facility during all this. And you've created a checklist for families who have a loved one in the facility right now. Can you share a few examples?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, there are a lot of restrictions currently in place. And so I think it's really important that families educate themselves and their loved ones on the residents' rights. Despite the restrictions, residents still have a right to receive good care and to live in a safe, clean environment. And that's especially critical now, given the important role that infection control plays with reducing the spread of COVID-19. And so if they haven't done so already, families should familiarize themselves with the safety measures that should be in place. That includes proper screening of anyone going into the facility, staff and residents practicing proper hand hygiene, and then also ensuring that all of the staff are wearing PPE and wearing it appropriately, meaning that if they've got a face mask on, it should be covering their mouth and their noses. And, you know, if families become aware of concerns that a facility is not following those infection control procedures, that's a concern. And I encourage them to reach out to the ombudsman for guidance on how to get that addressed. Also, families should be receiving communication from the facility with updates on how their loved one is doing. And then I encourage families to speak up and share their stories of the hardships that their loved ones have experienced during this time while visits have been restricted since mid-March. You know, the past 6 months have just really taken an emotional toll on the residents as well as their families, many of whom have not been able to see their loved ones in person, face to face. And we've just heard heartbreaking stories of the negative impact that that's taking on the residents. And so, you know, we're starting to see some lifting and loosening of those restrictions for some facilities, but there's still a lot of advocacy that needs to be done so that visits can occur in all facilities. And that's something that we're doing as ombudsmen and that we certainly encourage family members to do as well.
Thank you so much for sharing with us what you do. We really appreciate it. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much.
Call the Senior Source at 214-823-5700 for more information, or simply go to theseniorsource.org.